I can't. So what's your washes? What's your washes?
Wet hands with water and apply enough soap to cover all surfaces of the hands. Let the water run smoothly to avoid touching the tap later on. Rub hands palm to palm to obtain a good quantity of foam. Then rub right palm over the back of left hand with interlaced fingers, and vice versa. Rub again palm to palm with fingers interlaced. Rub the back of your fingers to opposing palms with fingers interlocked, repeating this action for each hand. Rub rotationally left thumb clasped in the right palm, and vice versa. To clean the tips of the fingers, rub rotationally backwards and forwards with clasped fingers of right hand in left palm, and vice versa. Rinse hands thoroughly with running water. Dry hands thoroughly with a single-use towel. If the tap is not elbow operated, use this towel to turn off the tap without touching it directly. Your hands are now clean and safe.
Viruses and bacteria are what we would describe as germs. And these are the germs that we think about when we think about getting sick. And people are often confused between bacteria and viruses, but they're actually very different than each other. They do have some similarities, so let's think about the similarities first. They're both microscopic, meaning very, very small, so we need a microscope to see them. They both do cause and can cause very severe illness. They can cause illness in humans like us. They can cause illness in animals like this little dog here. And even plants have bacterial and viral illnesses that can be problems for them. There are going to be different types of viruses and bacteria that infect the different species, but they all can cause a lot of trouble. Let's think about some ways that they're different than each other. So I said that they're both microscopic. That's true, but they actually are very different size-wise. So bacterial cells are actually very large compared to viruses. Bacterial cells can be sometimes 200 times larger than viruses, which is really interesting. But again, still both microscopic. Bacterial cells are very unique in that they are alive. They're individual cells. They're able to reproduce on their own. So if we call our little M&M, yay, candy, a bacterial cell, this bacterial cell can reproduce. Take one and then you make two out of that. These two would then go on to make four, and they're going to continue to reproduce in this way. So they can reproduce on their own, and then they can cause infections in people. Bacterial cells are interesting too because they actually can be good for us. We have bacterial cells that live all over our bodies, on our skin. There's bacterial cells that live in our intestines. They're called normal flora, and they're actually really important. They help us to break down food and even produce vitamins like vitamin K for us. So they can be good too. So these are bacterial cells, so they are able to reproduce on their own. Versus viruses. Viruses are not actually living. It's interesting that scientists classify them as something between living and non-living, which is a really interesting place to be. But these viruses, the reason we say that they're in between living and non-living is that they need a host to reproduce. So viruses, they can live on door handles and they can live on hands. And again, if you shake hands with somebody, you can pass the virus to somebody. You sneeze and cough. But once they pass from one person to another, they actually have to get into a cell to reproduce and make more of them. So here's an example of this. So say this is your cell, right? You shook hands with somebody, you touched your eye, and now you have a virus that's invading your cells. Here's your little virus that's going to infect our cell. So what the virus is actually going to do is attach to particular cells. It's going to take this DNA that's inside the virus, run that down into your cell, and then what the viral DNA will do is take over the manufacturing equipment inside of the cell. So inside the cell, no more are we producing bacterial cells or any type of your own proteins, but now we're making only viruses. So it's essentially a virus factory at this point. So it's no longer performing functions for you. Then what happens is this thing is going to fill up with viruses so much, so baby viral particles are going to fill until we get to the point when bust open, and now we have all of these little baby viruses running around, and they're going to go and infect another cell in your body. So that's how viral infections spread in your body. So viruses need a host cell to reproduce. That's a major difference that we have. How do we treat viruses and how do we treat bacterial cells? Viruses typically are shorter course of illness. You're talking between 2 and 10 days depending upon how healthy the person was to start with. Bacterial illnesses typically are longer. You're looking at more of a 10-day to 12-day course for bacterial infections.
Wash your hands more. The more you wash your hands, the less likely you are to spread the virus to other people. So if you've been out in a public place, on a bus or a train, wash your hands as soon as you can afterwards. And when you're done, turn the tap off using a tissue and put it in the bin.
Antibacterial gels do work, but soap and water is best.
Number 2, avoid touching your eyes, nose and mouth, because that's the way the virus could get into your body. You can still touch your face, but only if you've washed your hands before. Number 3, catching your coughs and sneezes.
Experts think coronavirus is spread by droplets that come out of your nose and mouth. So when you sneeze or cough, catch them with disposable tissues, then bin it and wash your hands. Disposable tissues are better than handkerchiefs that you carry around with you all the time. If you don't have a tissue, sneeze or cough into the crook of your elbow.
Don't touch things with your hands if you don't have to. The less you touch things like surfaces, handrails, lift buttons, the less
We're still using the word inevitable when asked whether this virus will spread. That's why prevention has become such an important aspect of the response. Despite the unknowns, there are some steps you can take to protect yourself. With more presumptive cases of coronavirus hitting multiple states overnight, medical experts are now doubling down on preventative measures we all can take to reduce the chance of attracting the COVID-19 disease.
It's more important than ever for people to practice good health habits.
The virus is thought to spread mainly from person to person, either through close contact, meaning a range of about 6 feet, or through respiratory droplets produced when an infected person coughs or sneezes. While it's unknown how long the virus can survive on infected surfaces, officials aren't ruling out the spread if someone then touches their mouth, nose, or eyes.
So things that people regularly touch tend to be doorknobs, keyboards, phones. Hand washing defeats all of that.
With a vaccine still months away and millions of Americans heading back to work, the CDC still says the best way to prevent illness is to avoid being exposed with these tips. Wash your hands with soap for 20 seconds. Avoid touching your face. If you feel sick, stay home and commit to regular cleaning.
At the start of your day, you want to wipe down your keyboard and wipe down your phone so it's clean at the beginning of the day. That's a good measure to take.
Experts say the most important things we can do in preparation are the same things we do for a cold or flu season. And we've shown you how to prevent the spread of illnesses before at work.
You can actually see the entire building start getting sick if one person comes in and touches a few of these buttons. These bad boys are nastier than toilet seats.
And at home,
all the handles on everything, which usually are hard surfaces, so the metal handles, if you have little kids, lower down.
And even if you take public transportation.
If you sit in the window seat, you actually decrease your chances for getting sick because there are less people walking by you.
The Surgeon General issued a stern message on Twitter saying, seriously people, stop buying masks. They are not effective in preventing general public.
Is stay at home unless your symptoms get more severe. Well, what does that mean? How do I know that my symptoms are so severe that I should go to the emergency room? Well, I'd like to answer that today. I want to remind everyone that the vast majority of patients that have COVID-19 are going to have relatively mild symptoms. That means those patients with mild disease will have a fever and a cough. Now remember, the fever may be very mild, only 99 degrees or higher, and the cough is usually dry, meaning you're not coughing anything up. I want to remind everyone that the vast majority of patients that have COVID-19 are going to have relatively mild symptoms. That means those patients with mild disease will have a fever and a cough. Now remember, the fever may be very mild, only 99 degrees or higher, and the cough is usually dry, meaning you're not coughing anything up. For that other 20% with more severe symptoms, those are patients that are typically greater than 65 years old and have other immunocompromising conditions like immunosuppression due to cancer therapy, chronic suppression with prednisone, high blood pressure, diabetes, lung disease like COPD or emphysema, or heart disease. They should be more mindful of their symptoms because they're more at risk for having severe disease. The two clear ways to monitor at home are with hypoxia and your respiratory rate.